What's up, everybody? It is me, King Alpha. Hope everybody's doing great. I just want to state really quick. For some reason, my audio, in terms of I think the video broadcast that I'm using, is currently flip floppy. So I'm very sorry if in this audio, this is the second time I'm doing this video. Mind you, these videos are freaking long, so I don't want to keep making them and then testing audio, and then all of a sudden, like, there's like some little minor sound in the background. So just, do keep in mind if there's any audio or something like that, or sometimes a little snippet of an audio cuts out. I'm trying to fix it. It's just I don't exactly know don't fully know what's the problem yet. So, anyways, as a surprise video, I'm making you guys a Conqueror's Blade video. I know this is a tier 4 unit tier list, and I didn't make a tier 3 one. However, I'll make a tier 3 one when it's the beginning of the new season of season 16. But I figured to make one now. There's a lot of buffs coming out and everything like that. There's a lot of nerfs and stuff. Um, so I feel like I really obviously wanted to more or less make this video now because it's a really good time, especially due to everything. So, anyways, let's get into this. So we are gonna do infantry, range, and then cav. One thing I do like about making unit tier lists in terms of the fact that it's era based is that there's a lot smaller units. So instead of doing all of them all at once, it's like it's way easier to do it. So Mermillions. I'm going to be putting these guys at king tier. I don't think it's even a question. If you guys haven't been playing for a little while, Mermillions came out in the Gladiator season, and funny enough, these guys were actually able to get a buff after their season, of course, that they were able to basically double bash. And ever since, they've been really, really good. They counter stalwarts, they do what they have to do and everything, and it's been great. Um, so these guys are obviously king tier. Like that's it. Like there's no need to question it. Whatever. Axe Raiders. I'm gonna be putting these guys at alpha tier. So Axe Raiders are alpha tier mainly due to the fact that it's based off of use. Oh, and I'm very sorry, guys. This tier list is mainly based off of normal, like normal matchmaking. And I guess a bit of TW, mainly because I can't put ranked in here. If they're king tier or alpha tier, you could definitely try and use them in ranked. Um, but the reason why this isn't like a ranked tier, like this is heavy on ranked. So don't please don't be like, oh my god, why is he putting that unit alpha tier? I would never use that in ranked. Ranked, you can use all units. For example, some of these units that even though they're really good during purple tier, when gold units are introduced, they're not that. They may not. They may fall off. So please keep that in mind. I forgot to state that. Very very sorry. Anyways, Axe Raiders are really, really good. I think they still can do their thing. I've seen a couple people use them, and as long as you use them correctly, especially when like blob fights happen and stuff, and you send your Axe Raiders through a unit, and they can go behind and do a lot of damage, it's really, really good. And also the fact that so many people are using Janissaries, so many people are using Zakillian Militia, that even one little decent unit of Axe Raiders, when you're doing like a nice big push, Axe Raiders can be really, really good. I think it really just depends on the usage of them. They're not a trash unit. They don't need a buff. They aren't not meta. It's just they're a unit that is specific in doing a certain job. So they're definitely good to use. Are they like a must-have to get immediately? No, not at the moment. There's definitely a lot of other units that definitely are a must-have. Um, that will really help you out excel in Conqueror's Blade. All right, Crescent Monks. These guys came out this season. I'm gonna be putting them alpha tier. So they are really good. They're nice in blob fights. I've been flanked by these guys a couple times. You really just don't expect it, especially when you get put on your ass, and then all of a sudden monks are like spinning on you, and then they do damage. They're spinning on you, and then they hit you, and you're like, what the? Like, dude, the damage can be pretty good. Of course, there's not many of them, so you do have to be careful with how you're using them. They are very tanky, but again, it's one of those things where they're not a very single one unit, kind of like Vermilions, where you can kind of like sometimes just run around with them, and as long as it's a 1v1 situation, you'll be fine. But monks, it's one of those things where you do have to use them correctly. They are like fatter berserkers, more or less. but you just need to be making sure that you're using the skills right, you're having them in the right position, etc. They are a fun unit. I think they're a very fun unit to use. Are they meta breaking or game breaking? No. But 100% they're a very fun unit, and I'm glad that they came into the game. They're just like, they're a mix of things, so it's cool. Asseps. I'm gonna be putting Asseps at buff, please. I definitely forgot to state as well that there is Sword and Shield Infantry are being buffed on March 23rd, and I don't believe I saw Asseps in there. And one of the big things about Asseps, I believe, is just like they've gotten a rework, they've gotten a buff, they've gotten this and that, and I think it's just solely like every time they do a buff or anything to these guys, it's never enough for them. Mainly due to the fact that they have the damage, but due to other units having the damage and tankiness, or having the CC, or having the um you know, the area effect type of fight, whereas like Vermilions, when you do the shield bash, they freaking can hit a lot of people, and then you do another bash, you have like 40s to a 360 brace. You know, Asseps, they have good defense, but a lot of the units really really struggle, and a lot of the situations in the game currently aren't 1v1 based. Asseps are really really good 1v1 unit, um if you use them correctly. But at the same time, in a team fight, you're not going to be like, oh, yeah, my Asseps are going to dominate this team fight. Because most likely you're going to be going in there, and, units are just going to tank the damage from the Asseps. And then the Asseps are just so weak in defense. All of a sudden, boom, just people just go and demolish them. So I don't want to say rework these guys, but I think maybe just to buff them so that they're just highly offensive unit, but they suck defensively. Um, I like their best defense is obviously the like counter, and then you press the button again, and they do like that the animation. I think you just maybe need to up the damage a bit more on their abilities, kind of like before. I do miss when season 4 came out and these Asseps would do the ability and slap me silly, and I was like, "Whoa, what the heck is that?" But now with the runes and everything like that, Asseps, and how the team fights work, it's just Asseps aren't a key feature in there. So yeah. Um, Banner guards are next. So banner guards are actually getting a buff on the 23rd, but it's nothing in terms of heavy. They're getting a pretty decent buff, so I am going to be putting these guys alpha tier. Um, I I want to put these guys in buff. You know what? I'm going to say this. I want to put these guys in buff, please, anyways, due to the fact that um they are getting a buff. They're going to be decent, but there's still a lot of other units that most likely will shred banner guards. And due to the fact that banner guards require more or less, it's a high skilled unit. I know some people would be like, "Oh, what?" No, banner guards do require some skill, or some skill. They do require skill. They do require you pressing multiple buttons at the same time, controlling your hero and trying to control them when using the banner, etc. They're a very fun unit, and I think they're one of my favorite units to use. And I was probably one of the only few people that did use them when they came out in season 10. But I think it's a thing where banner guards also sometimes solely rely, well, not sometimes, most of the time rely on your teammates. It's one of those things where you don't have communications with other people saying, "Hey, I'm restarting your charge," or this or that, unless you're in comms and you're saying, "Hey, I got banner guards, I'm going to restart your charge, be ready to charge again," or something. So that's one of the big downfalls of banner guards, that they're like more or less like role based, but they are a fun unit to use. I've used them before, they're so fun. It's just one of those things where I think they just need. Hopefully, the buff coming up is going to be pretty good. I think it's mainly versus like pole arms, a lot of sword and shield infantry versus pole arms, because pole arms are obviously dominant right now. Um, and I think I think banner guards maybe just need something else, maybe animation things, or um, even more of a buff. Who knows? So let me know what you guys think about that. Obviously, let me know what you guys think about any of this list. This is solely my opinion. You guys could think I'm totally wrong or anything like that. It's fully up to you guys. So next is Berserkers. I'm going to be putting Berserkers at alpha tier. They're still really, really good. I think personally, they're not one of those things where you can just, they're one of the best units right now. And you can just run them in and do whatever. But they're still a really good unit. They're still a good unit for flanking. Still a good unit for sometimes even blob fights and everything. You can really sometimes lose a couple berserkers, but even if you have 3 to 4 berserkers, they can still do a lot of damage, and it's still really really fun to use these guys. Um, so they definitely have the value there. So and especially decent leadership as well and everything. They're still really really good personally. Next is claymores. I'm gonna be putting claymores at alpha tier, mainly due to the fact that you know obviously with some skilled people they can really use them at king tier and everything, but claymores, everybody knows, has their downside of for freedom, and if you use them in a certain situation where you can't have them basically have that negative effect for a certain amount of time, you may lose the unit immediately. And obviously, it's all based off of usage, where, how you're planning them and everything. And they are a good unit in blob fights and stuff. It's really dependent on the situation. Um, and it's one of those things where it's not a key unit to get into the game, like to get in the game right now. There's a lot of other units that you can use, that you can almost get the same value out of them as you would claymores. But regardless, claymores are still good in the right hands. Claymores can be used, amazingly. But again, pole arms are kind of dominant right now, so claymores kind of can get smacked very easily through them, or by them. So that's just the thing. Um, Forte everybody knows Forte ever since they got that buff that made them brace 360. They've been really, really good. It's basically been the modal of purple tier now. So, due to halberdier sergeants weren't there until now, but um, but sorry. So Forte or King tier, I don't really have to explain myself. Ever since they got the Fort 360 brace, it's been basically GG. So I really don't need to say anything else. I think if they ever take off the 360 brace, they'll still be King tier. But like ever since they put the 360 brace, I really wish they could just brace to the sides. Like brace forward and sides. But don't turn all the way behind you with a long ass pike. It just makes no sense. Anyways, Immortal Garrison. Okay, so this is something I wanted to talk about, and it's one of those things where, yeah, I'm gonna talk about this because, and I know this fully seems almost wrong. This unit is alpha to beta tier, and the reason why I'm saying this is because with the new units and everything coming out, with a lot of units being reworked or buff or anything like that, Immortal Garrison have more or less lost their value, but yet they're still such a strong unit. I think it's mainly due to the fact that with how things are going right now, when you're using, Mermillions, you're using Stalwarts. If you were to ban Mermillions and Stalwarts, you'd see Immortal Garrison, and Imperial Spears. But the big thing is that with a unit like Mermillions and with a unit like Stalwarts being in the current meta, it almost makes Immortal Garrison be useless. Due to the fact that, Stalwarts, easy buttons to press. One, you press F2, brace. Mermillions, F2, charge when you want. Immortal Garrison obviously require a lot of skill. They're an amazing unit, but they require so much skill to use. And with how things are going in terms of how many Mermillions are being used, how many Stalwarts are being used, um, it's one of those things where Immortal Garrison can't hold enough. Even if even if you have people behind you, you still need to be a very skilled player when using a Immortal Garrison. Now, are they beta tier? Are they trash? They aren't. However, these guys are still really good in terms of damage. They can do really really well in terms of anything. So, all right, let's get back to it. So, um, Immortal Garrison are still good. I don't want to put them beta tier because some people may get freaking outraged and be like, dude, they're still an amazing unit, blah blah blah. I understand that. It's just the meta right now, they just don't fit in the meta at all. That's one of the big problems. A unit that is still really good doesn't need a buff, but with other units being so dominant in the meta, it's one of those things where it makes this unit almost feel irrelevant. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about that because Immortal Garrison, I remember back then before Mermillions and Stalwarts got their buff, Immortal Garrison during purple tier, that was the thing, you know? It was literally Immortal Garrison City. Like, it was Immortal Garrison, Fort Braccio, and then whatever other units, etc. They were your best shield unit, even better than Imperial Spear. So, yeah, you know. All right. Anyways, Halberdier Sergeants are king tier. Now, Fortibratcher are obviously the go-to. However, Halberdier Sergeants are still really, really good. An amazing brace. They did get a buff and everything like a season or something ago. They did get a buff, and ever since then, they've been really, really good. I'm glad that Halberdier Sergeants are in the meta. It's one of those things where they have always been really good. It's just one of those things where it's always due to the meta, how the meta works, and with the purple tier luck, halberdier sergeants are really, really, really good. It's almost one of those things where you have the blue halberdiers and then you have the halberdier sergeants. And then for 230 leadership as well, you can't go wrong with halberdier sergeants. I love their brace. I've killed so many heroes and units. It's been just amazing. So definitely use halberdier sergeants. They're a great unit to use. You can a good composition is basically like if you wanted to, Mermillions, halberdier sergeants, berserkers, Mermillions, halberdiers, monks, or you can even do the trio of Mermillions, Fortebraccio, and that. It all really works out. Next is Huskarls. I want Huskarls to either get a buff or a rework. I don't really know what it really is or how it would be stated, but I'm just gonna put them at buff, please, because the main thing is that their tier 3 charge, or tier 3 chant charge is so good. But after that, they just fall off. The unit just falls off completely and everything. Another thing is that the chant takes so long that you really have to time your chant correctly, or else you more or less either wasted the chant, your unit's chanting and the fight is already over. You chanted, and once you finish chanting, you're already getting pushed back. It's very annoying, and it's one of those things where it's such a great concept of a unit, but how Conqueror's Blade is working right now, it's a unit that more or less, you really, really have to just time correctly, and then you can do good. But again, as well, their level 2 chant abilities, their level 1 chant ability isn't really good. It's one of those things where, the unit is best at its tier of tier 3, and that's it. So I wonder if Huskarls need either a rework on some of the skills, or they need just a buff in terms of the fact of like lowering the time for chanting, lowering, this or that. Let me know what you guys think. But yeah, I love the Scarls. It's just one of those things where the meta just fully isn't for them fully. So yeah. Next is Imperial Jabs. I'm going to be putting these guys at Alpha tier. Personally, jabs are still really good. It just really depends on the player. I won't say to buff them. It's not like they're useless, but 100% it depends on the player using them correctly. They're not a bad unit. You can have great doctrines on them. It's really one of those things where can you freaking aim, more or less? Can you aim? Can you do what you got to do with the jabs? And you can still be pretty successful. Imperial Pikes are king tier. They're a great unit. They just really rely on the proper advance. And it's one of those things where you could definitely see them being used in TW and everything as well. But in normal siege, when you're using Imperial Pikes, it's not about the kills. It's more or less about what you're doing with the Imperial Pikes, how you're stopping in advance, how you're stopping the cav, etc. Are you stopping the good infantry push when they're pushing from the sides, all that type of stuff. So they are a really good unit. It's just really dependent on the usage of them. So yeah. Stalwarts are king tier. They did get a nerf on the 16th, which was literally yesterday. However, the unit is still really, really good. I think due to the fact that I like it's just one of those things where millions are good and they counter stalwarts, but stalwarts are still really good in terms of being one of the best shield units right now. And just their brace damage is so good. It's one of those things where they're still going to be staying king tier unless they like really nerf the damage to the ground where people can just obliterate stalwarts without taking a lot of damage, or stalwarts not having that more or less amazing brace. They're still a great unit to use if you use them correctly, and you could do really, really well holding positions with them. Next is Imperial Spears. I'm gonna be putting these guys at alpha tier because they are good. They basically do their job. They are getting a buff coming up, I believe, on the 23rd, or was that yesterday? I'm not really sure. I kind of forgot. Um, but they're still good. They're a good unit. They do their job. I think they're improving their protection. Yeah, it is on the 23rd. They're improving the protection of the Imperial spears so that when like they basically protect more. They're more or less that front line. And I think so many people are like, oh, but this unit, it doesn't do damage and all that type of stuff. It does damage to cover commander, but you shouldn't expect that every unit just to do damage and everything. Every unit has, a certain role and stuff. So they definitely play their role. They just need to obviously play their role a bit better to kind of match spears, Vermilions and stalwarts more or less. Javelins are alpha tier. Again, it's almost the same thing like Imperial Javs. Javelin Sergeants are good. It's just really one of those things of like how you're using the Javelin Sergeants. Are you using the Javelin Sergeants to only focus heroes? Not the smartest thing. Are you using Javelin Sergeants to counter all the Janissaries, all the Zachilian militia sitting in the back? The flanking the sides with them and hitting from behind. It's one of those things when using Javelin Sergeants that is really, really good. And if you can have good doctrines on them as well, they're a great unit. So, Men at Arms, I'm going to be putting at buff, please. They're getting a buff on the 23rd, and they're like improving the cover commander again, and they're improving their shield and stuff. But the thing is that it's one of those things where like every unit that has the counterpart of it is still needing help because their counterpart is just better than them. Um, and it's one of those things where I think they just need another buff in terms of either you make them really, really tanky. Like, I mean, they're already pretty tanky, but like I'm talking about tanky in terms of other things so that like they could just survive maybe heroes mauling down on them because that's one thing. It's a great unit, but once one or two mauls come in, especially now in the meta, one or two mauls come in and hit you on this. Good luck with that, and also just fighting even units that they bring with them. So um, I definitely want to see the buff on the 23rd, but I do think these guys will probably still need another buff or either some new traits or something that can maybe help them at least be relevant and be able to fight in the meta. Palace Guards are alpha tier. They're still one of the best units to immediately grab in the game. It's one of those things where, yeah, you may not see them over Vermilions a lot, but Palace Guards, no one can say, oh, no, don't pick up Palace Guards. It's like the wrong choice to do if you're playing the game, you're starting the game and stuff. They're a great unit. If you use them correctly, they're still a great unit. And they're also getting a buff on the 23rd as well. So, all things to keep in mind that these guys are alpha tier is just simply that other units right now are just really, really good in terms of obviously Vermilion's shield bashing a lot of the shields and all that type of stuff. So, Palace Guards are still good. You just really need to use them correctly, and they're still a great unit to use in the meta. If you have them, you just need the right doctrines as well. Men at Arms, I'm going to be putting these guys at alpha tier. Um, I've been seeing them being used a lot more. They are very tanky. They have like the new abilities and stuff, or new traits and everything in terms of their when they put down the shield and attack. So they are really good. But I think it's still up to the player whether to use them or not. They're a decent unit, but it's one of those things again where would you use Men at Arms over for example, berserkers would use men at arms over maybe even crescent monks. It's one of those things where it's really up to the player how you want to play them. Are they a shit unit? No. If you use them correctly, they can do a lot of damage. But if you decide that you want to just charge them in and then think that they're going to be doing damage like that and all that type of stuff, no, they're not. Heroes can go and jump on paladins immediately and shred them. So you just have to keep in mind how you use the unit, but it's still a good unit. It's not one of those things where it's just they're just trash or anything like that. Spear sergeants, I got nothing to say for that. That's just immediately like, dude, just again, it's the same thing. I think with old units, maybe start giving them new traits that make them different compared to their counterparts, so that they just are at least on an equal basis of their counterpart, but play a different role. So, um, Seregs, you know what? I'm gonna put fucking Seregs at rework because I want to say buff them, but I don't think a buff is really gonna do enough. I think Seregs are the only unit in this game, um, that are obviously a tier 4 unit that do blunt and are I think this is the only blunt sword and shield, or well, blunt weapon and shield infantry. If I'm wrong, like because I know there's Iron Reapers, but I'm talking about like a blunt weapon and a shield. The whole point of Seregs is to bash through shields and everything like that. Bash the enemy down, knock them down. Why is it that Seregs, like, Seregs are fun for the player. Like, if the player has a good charge at the back, whatever, this and that, yeah, it's fun. It's, you're like, yeah, I just got 50 kills with Seregs, you know. But it's one of those things that it's a one at a time moment that happens or something, and you're like, yes. I love Seregs. I've loved Seregs for so long, season 3, season 4, when I came into the game. Please just rework these guys. Make it so that they can actually shield bash. They have a blunt weapon. They should be able to literally knock down infantry um, when they're bashing into them. They should be able to go into palace guards, into Mermillions, having a charge. At least, for example, Sereg should charge. If they charge at Mermillions and Mermillions are charging at them, it should be an equal trade. Because even though Seregs have less defense, dude, they hit like a truck. If you've ever noticed, if you just press V on these guys, if you XV them, they're insane. Like, they can hit heavy damage. It's the fact that their freaking defense is so low that it's just like, you could smack a Sereg silly and it just falls to the ground. So my thing is, please just make these guys either get new traits, make it so that they can actually shield bash. When they do a charge, that they actually shield bash down. Um, multiple things. I think it's just one of those things where it's just like, I would really really love to see these guys. I think in the March 23rd third update, I don't even think these guys are getting a buff in terms of the fact of like versus pole arms. So it's like one of those things where they just constantly forget about the season 2 units sometimes, unless it's Keshigs, because Keshigs seem to always randomly come back every 2 to 3 seasons. So please, just give Sarek some love. Please, for the love of God, just please give him some love. Anyways, we are going into the ranged area. So this is going to go by really, really quick. Um, I'm going to be putting longbows, Imperial Cuirassiers, and Kriegs all at more or less beta tier. I want to put them all at, well, I'm gonna put these 2 muskets at, uh, buff, please. Longbows, yes, I'm just gonna say they did get a buff and they're okay. They just still don't have the armor penetration needed in the fights and stuff. However, it's still one of those things where they're all right. They're okay to use. I'm just gonna say to buff them again. Maybe give them more armor penetration so that they can actually burst through all these shields. Yeah, I'm just gonna put that. I don't know. I'm not a ranged player during purple tier era. Right now, it's Janissary and Zakilia militia play. So it's like, again, it's like one of those things where it's like, longbows, you're gonna sit on top of a wall with your own longbow and do that. It really depends on the map, this and that. There's so many like key factors to longbows to actually make them work correctly. Now, for anybody that uses longbows, if you like using them, man, do your thing, But personally, they need more armor penetration for me to want to use these guys because, yeah. um, Imperial Arquebusiers, I'm gonna state this: fights don't last long enough for you to actually get a nice volley fire off. I remember back then, Imperial Arquebusiers were amazing. The fights were a little bit slower, even if they were ball fights and everything. And Imperial Arquebusiers were able to get multiple volleys off without having to worry about, for example, Zakilian militia throwing bombs on them. Or people breaking through the line immediately and going into the Arquebusiers and everything. Higher shield defense. So Imperial Arquebusiers just don't have a high enough armor break in terms of the situation on the map. that they can actually sit there in a volley fire and continue to volley fire, things like that. So let me know what you guys think about this ranged area. I would like some opinions. I know I'm very biased, I guess, towards range right now, but it's just one of those things where I don't ever see them do really well unless it's a lower game. Unless people are playing chicken and or something and just not playing correctly, and you're able to get a really amazing volley fire off for a really long time. Just me. Next is Kriegs. Amazing sharpshooter unit, but it's one of those things where again, ammo, armor break. I think a lot of it with the units is, for example, Imperial Arquebusiers and Kriegs, during a purple tier luck, it's one of those things of why use them when you can use Janissaries. Um, when a blue unit is better than the purple tier unit during a purple tier luck, purple tier and below, that shouldn't be the case. Like not all the time. Maybe in certain situations, depending on the map, Janissaries, yeah, can be better than, for example, using Imperial Arquebusiers or Kriegs. But I think 100%, in a lot more situations, people shouldn't be choosing Janissaries over Kriegs or Imperial Arquebusiers because they are a great unit. It's just they don't have the armor penetration to actually or time to really sit there and do their skills. So it's one of those things where I want to kind of say to, I think, rework um Imperial Arquebusiers and Kriegs in terms of having them getting either new traits after a certain amount of shots, maybe breaks the armor or something like that of a shield unit, does more damage to units compared to heroes, etc. I don't know. I think they personally need a rework because again, Janissaries have such a high accuracy, such a high block break, all that type of stuff. It's like, what's the point of using these guys? So let me know what you guys think about that. I know some people really love them. So, next is Imperial Archers. I'm gonna put Imperial Archers at Alpha tier. I still prefer my old Imperial Archers of just putting on the Botkin and then just letting them spray and pray. But Imperial Archers can hit heavy with that skill. Um, they are still a decent unit. Are they a must-have unit? No, but if you use them correctly, they can still do really really well. So yeah, the problem again though is with ranged units in the purple era. It's one of those things of why use them when you can use Janissaries or Sicilians. Get what I mean? So, yeah. Or like even Namkans. Things like that. Next is camels. So we're going into the cav now. Camels are king tier. I'm gonna be putting them king tier mainly because of the fact that they're such a great anti-cav unit. Really it's one of those things where you don't want to bring your cav into them at all. And they're really good. We even saw them being used obviously a lot in the CBL. And with a purple and below tier lock, they can be used if you use them well enough. You can really make sure that the enemy don't come in with cav or come and try and flank you with cav and things like that. So they are a really fun unit to use, especially if you do fortibrators and camels. It's one of those things where you ain't getting through that. So really depends on the situation as well though, but they're still a really great unit to use. Are they a must-have unit? Probably not, but it's one of those things where they play their role and they do it well. So Perfection Heavy Cavalry are coming into Alpha tier because they are still a really good unit. They're still one of those fun units that they actually did get a buff and everything previously. And they're just basically like the tier 4 Keshigs, and they're really fun to use. I personally have fun using them. It only really depends though if you can get a good flank and you have good doctrines on them. But they're still just fun unit to use, and I think, people sometimes can underestimate Perfection Heavy Cavalry because they're so fast and their charge does a lot of damage and their AI is actually pretty good. So Dagger X Lancers are king tier. So the thing is, the Dagger X Lancers did just get a nerf yesterday. However, I still think they're going to be king tier due to the fact that you still can you basically have tier 4 cataphracts. We saw in the CBL that they, the team, the main CBL team that won used I can't remember their name right now. Used them Dagger X Lancers so much, and it was the reason why they won a lot of the fights. And in Siege, you see that a lot as well, though, with the fact that due to the fact that heroes can, jump behind enemy lines or this and that, and just use cover commander and then charge again. You really just have that tier 4 mini cataphract unit right now, so they're still really good. Army gears, I'm gonna say that they are alpha tier. Personally, dagger axe lancers are being used a lot more. I would say you can actually put army gears still at king tier due to the fact that they're king and alpha tier, because dagger axe lancers are really good as well, but army gears are still pretty good. But you will see a lot more dagger axe lancers due to the fact that you can double charge and they do a lot more damage and all that type of stuff. Um, but I think we still definitely see still a lot of use of army gears, depending on, more or less the situation and stuff. It really depends on the players. Sipahis, oh man, these horses have just sadly never been good, man. Just rework these guys, give them new traits, make it so they can actually stomp people out. They're so slow. If you're gonna make them slow, make them like really tanky. I don't know. My thing is, I wouldn't mind if Sipahis were king tier and they just dominate decently well between the purple area and below. So yeah, just freaking rework those guys. I don't know, man. And the same with the Yemen. Again, it's another thing where their counterpart is way better than them. And they just need a buff. They need new traits. They need maybe a different type of play style so that they can actually be used. But yeah, their counterpart army gears are just way better. So let me know what you guys fully think about this list. There's maybe some units here that can be put at like beta tier, because you still can use them, but it really depends on the player and stuff. Um, let me know if you guys agree with the alpha tier, the king tier, the rework or the buff, please, or just don't even use. Um, Again, this was all my opinion. I really appreciate any comments below, whether you feel like, oh, this unit really could be used, or oh, but why is he putting this unit at this area? I've used this unit well. Just gonna state, if one person uses a unit well, that's great for you. But can everyone use that unit really well? And is the meta going to allow for that unit to be played really well? Really well, probably not. So if you guys do enjoy any of these units that you use, even if they're in the buff, please, or rework, or for example, you use X Raiders 24/7, they should be king tier. You know, it's king tier for you. So just keep that in mind. Peace out, guys. Have a good one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.